At 12:17 in the morning, my phone rang, and my daughter was crying so hard I could barely understand her. Behind her voice, I heard trucks passing, rain hitting pavement, a bell over a gas station door, and my 4-year-old grandson whispering, "Mommy, are we sleeping here?" Then Emily said the words no father ever forgets. "Dad, Ryan left us. He drove away with her." I was already reaching for my keys when she added, "He said the house is his. The car is his. He said I can figure out the rest from a gas station." That was the moment I stopped being tired. I had been asleep in my recliner when the call came. Not real sleep, the kind an old man slips into after the 10 o'clock news with the television still murmuring to a room that has been too quiet for too many years. My wife, Margaret, had been gone almost 6 years, but I still left the lamp on beside her chair. Outside Central Ohio was wrapped in cold November rain. My phone buzzed on the side table, and when I saw Emily's name, I felt something tighten before I answered. Emily. For a second there was only broken breathing. "Dad," she said. I sat up. "What happened?" "I'm at a Shell station off Route 33, near Lancaster. Noah's with me. Are you hurt?" "No, I don't think so." "I'm scared." That word did something to me. Emily was 32, a 4th-grade teacher, steady as her mother had been. I had seen her cry at funerals and hospital rooms, but I had never heard her sound small. "Stay inside the store," I said, already standing. "I'm coming." I hung up before she could argue. In the hallway I grabbed my coat, then stopped beneath the framed photo of Margaret and me at Lake Erie. She was laughing in that picture, wind ruining her hair. I looked at her face, and I heard her voice when anger got too close to the wheel. "Don't let anger drive when your family needs protection." "I know," I whispered. Then I walked into the rain. The drive took 37 minutes. I watched every number on the dashboard clock while the wipers slapped back and forth. At a red light, Emily texted, "He took my purse. I have my phone. Noah keeps asking where his car seat is." My jaw locked. Ryan Miller had always rubbed me wrong. He talked over Emily at dinner and liked saying he was building something big. Still, I had told myself marriages had corners outsiders couldn't see. Maybe fathers lie to themselves when the truth asks too much. I wanted to call Ryan and ask what kind of man leaves his wife and child at a gas station in the rain. Instead, I set the phone face down. The second you warn a fool, you teach him where to hide. So I drove. The Shell station sat under a crooked yellow sign, bright and lonely against the black night. Through the glass I saw Emily near the coffee machine in a gray cardigan soaked dark at the shoulders. Noah sat beside her in dinosaur pajamas and a coat too light for the weather, clutching a blue backpack shaped like a shark. His sneakers didn't match. That nearly broke me. A child leaves home in mismatched shoes only when nobody gives his mother time to think. Emily saw my truck and stood. Noah pressed both hands to the window. "Grandpa?" I walked inside, and the warm smell of burnt coffee and hot dogs hit me. Emily crossed the store and fell into my arms. Not hugged, fell. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "For what? I didn't know who else to call. You call your father when the world gets ugly. That is not something you apologize for." Noah wrapped his arms around my leg. "Dad took Mommy's car," he said. "I know. Are we in trouble?" "No," I said. "Not anymore." The cashier cleared his throat. "She's been here about 40 minutes. I told her she could stay as long as she needed." He shrugged. "Some folks ain't right." No. Some folks weren't. I bought Noah chocolate milk crackers and a cheap stuffed bear. Outside, I wrapped my coat around him and carried him to the truck. Emily climbed in slowly, like every movement required permission. That was when I noticed her left hand. No wedding ring. "Where's your ring?" She stared through the windshield. Ryan took it off my hand. The rain sounded louder. He said if I was leaving his life, I didn't get to keep his name or his ring. For a moment, the gas station lights blurred. Then Noah yawned from the back seat and mumbled, "Grandpa, can we go home?" "Yes," I said. Emily turned toward me. "Dad, I don't have one." I put the truck in reverse. "You do tonight." On the drive back, she told me pieces. Ryan had come home after dinner with a woman named Vanessa, the same woman Emily had seen on his phone months earlier. He said he was done pretending. He said Vanessa understood ambition. He said Emily had become small-town baggage. When Emily told him he couldn't bring that woman into their home, Ryan laughed. "My home," he said. Then he grabbed Emily's purse, told Noah they were taking Mommy somewhere to cool off, and drove them to the gas station. Vanessa followed in Ryan's truck. At the pumps, Ryan told Emily to get out. He tossed Noah's shark backpack onto the wet pavement and said, "Call your dad. He loves rescuing you." Then he drove away with Vanessa beside him. By the time we reached my house, Noah was asleep with a cheap bear under his chin. I carried him into the guest room and covered him with one of Margaret's old quilts. Emily stood in the doorway, watching her son sleep like she was afraid he might disappear too. We sat at the kitchen table while rain tapped the windows. Finally, Emily whispered, "He said I have nothing." I looked down the hallway toward my office, where my safe sat behind a framed map of Lake Erie. Ryan had forgotten something. Years earlier, when he wanted help buying that house and that shiny SUV, he had signed papers he never bothered to read. I stood up. "What are you going to do?" Emily asked. "I'm going to make sure your husband learns the difference between what he drives and what he owns." The safe had not been opened in nearly 2 years, not because there was anything valuable inside in the way people usually meant valuable. No stacks of cash, no jewelry, mostly insurance papers, Margaret's death certificate, the deed to my little house, and envelopes marked in my handwriting because I never trusted memory as much as ink. Emily followed me down the hall, arms folded tight across her chest. "Dad," she said, "what file?" I moved the framed map of Lake Erie aside and pressed the numbers into the keypad. The lock clicked with that heavy little sound that always made a room feel serious, one I hoped I'd never need. Inside, behind a bundle of tax returns, was a brown accordion folder with a white label on the front. Emily House/Vehicle/Emergency. Her face changed when she saw her name. "What is that?" I carried it to the kitchen table. The same table where Margaret used to roll pie dough every Thanksgiving. Now it held papers that decide whether a man can keep hurting your child. I untied the red string around the folder. "When you and Ryan bought that house, I said he told everyone he'd saved enough for the down payment." Emily stared at me. "He said that because you told him not to tell people you helped." "No, I told him not to brag about money that wasn't his." She lowered herself into a chair. I pulled out the first document. "Your mother and I had seen enough young couples get ruined by pride and bad paperwork, so when Ryan asked for help, I didn't just write him a check." Emily looked almost afraid to breathe. "I put the money through the Morgan Family Trust. The trust recorded a secured note against the property. Ryan signed it. You signed it too, but you knew what it meant." He did not listen when the attorney explained it. She rubbed her forehead. "I remember signing things. I was 8 months pregnant with Noah. I just wanted the closing done. I know, that part still bothered me. Exhaustion makes honest people vulnerable and arrogant people bold." I slid the paper toward her. "This says the house could not be transferred, refinanced, or used as collateral beyond the original mortgage without written permission from the trust. It also says you and any minor child of yours have protected occupancy until a court says otherwise." Emily read the lines slowly. Protected occupancy. she whispered. That means Ryan doesn't get to throw you out because he has a new girlfriend and a loud mouth. For the first time since I had found her under those gas station lights, something like color returned to her face. Then I took out the second packet. This is for the SUV. Emily blinked. My car? Not exactly. She looked up. Ryan wanted that black Tahoe so badly he could taste it. Said it made him look like a serious contractor. Said clients respected a man who showed up in a good vehicle. Emily's mouth tightened. He said we needed it for the business. He said a lot of things. The Tahoe had been bought through my small rental company, Orchard Creek Properties. I had started that company after retiring from 34 years of HVAC work. Ryan convinced himself the vehicle was his because he drove it, washed it every Saturday, and parked it where neighbors could admire it. But the title had never been in his name. I showed Emily the registration copy, the insurance policy, and the vehicle use agreement. Ryan's signature sat at the bottom of every page, big and careless. He signed this? She asked. He signed it while talking about a football game on the television in my den. I told him to read it. He said, Jack, I trust you. That memory tasted bitter now. Emily read another line aloud. Use may be revoked if the vehicle is used in connection with abandonment, intimidation, concealment of marital assets, or harm against Emily Morgan Miller or her minor child. Her eyes filled. Mom wrote this, didn't she? I nodded. Margaret had been quiet, but quiet did not mean soft. When Emily got married, Margaret sat beside me with a yellow legal pad and said, Love is beautiful, Jack, but if our daughter ever needs a door back home, I want the hinges already oiled. I had laughed then. I was not laughing now. Emily touched the paper with 2 fingers. She knew. No, she worried. There's a difference. The rain kept tapping at the kitchen window. Down the hall, Noah coughed in his sleep. Emily turned toward the sound, immediately mother before victim, exactly as Margaret would have been. I feel stupid, she said. I closed the folder. Do not say that in my house, Dad. You loved your husband. You believed vows meant something. That is not stupidity. He made me stand there while she sat in my front seat. I said nothing. She was wearing my sunglasses. Emily laughed once, but it broke halfway through. Isn't that ridiculous? Out of everything, that's what I keep seeing. My sunglasses on her head while my son cried. Small cruelties have a way of becoming the sharpest ones. What happens now? She asked. First, you sleep. Tomorrow I call Martin Keller, our old attorney, your mother's favorite bulldog in a necktie. Emily almost smiled. He scared me when I was little. He scared grown men, too. My phone buzzed on the counter before I could say more. Unknown number. I let it ring out. A few seconds later, Emily's phone lit up. Her hands trembled when she looked at it. Ryan. She did not open the message, so I did. Tell your father to stay out of my marriage. The house is mine. The Tahoe is mine. If you want clothes for the kid, ask nicely. Emily covered her mouth. I read it twice. Then I placed the phone face down on the table, calm as I could make myself. He just made his first mistake, I said. What mistake? He put the lie in writing. Outside, the rain slowed to a whisper. Inside, the old folder sat between us like a locked door Ryan had forgotten he didn't own the key to. I did not sleep after Ryan's message. Emily tried. I heard the floorboards creak above me every hour or so as she checked on Noah, then walked back to the guest room where she had once slept as a teenager. Parents remember the sound of their children moving through a house, even when they are grown. At 6:15, I made coffee. By 7, Noah sat at my kitchen table wearing one of my old Buckeyes sweatshirts that hung past his knees. He dipped toast into eggs and asked whether Grandpa had cartoons. "I have news channels and baseball recordings," I said. He frowned. "That's not cartoons." Emily smiled faintly. "We'll fix that. Normal words, tiny ones." They mattered. At 8:30 I called Martin Keller. He answered like he had been expecting trouble for 30 years. "Jack Morgan. Nobody calls me this early unless a roof caved in or a relative got stupid. My son-in-law got stupid. That is usually more expensive than a roof." I told him enough to make him quiet. Martin had handled Margaret's estate and the trust documents years earlier. He was 70 now, mostly retired, with a voice like gravel and the patience of a man who had spent his life reading contracts other people wished they had read sooner. When I finished, he said, "Bring the folder, bring Emily, bring every text message." "And Jack?" "Yes. Do not threaten him, do not warn him, do not educate him." I wasn't planning to. "You were thinking about it." I looked toward the hallway where Margaret's picture sat in the morning light. "Maybe. Then stop thinking." His office was above an old bank building downtown, the kind with marble floors and brass railings that made every footstep sound official. Emily sat beside me in a blue sweater Margaret had knitted. She kept rubbing the sleeves between her fingers. Martin spread the documents across his conference table. For 20 minutes he said almost nothing. He read the trust agreement, the vehicle use contract, the occupancy clause, the secured note, the insurance schedule, and Ryan's text message printed from Emily's phone. Finally, he leaned back. "Well," he said, "Ryan Miller appears to be king of a kingdom he does not own." Emily let out a breath that was almost a laugh. Martin looked at her kindly. "Mrs. Miller, you and Noah have more protection here than your husband thinks. That does not mean this will be painless. It means he cannot simply erase you because he found someone who claps at his lies." Emily's eyes watered, but she nodded. "What do we do first?" I asked. "First, we document abandonment and unlawful exclusion from the home. Second, we notify him through counsel that Emily and the child have protected occupancy. Third, Orchard Creek Properties notifies him that the vehicle use agreement may have been violated." "That's my company," I said. "I know. I drafted the agreement." He removed his glasses. "Jack, if he used that Tahoe to abandon your daughter and grandson, you have grounds to revoke use. But we do it cleanly. Letter first, notice, recovery if he refuses." "Good," Martin pointed at me. That word sounded too happy. It wasn't happy. It was close enough. On the drive home, Emily's phone chimed 6 times. Ryan had discovered silence and did not like it. "You think some old file scares me? Then my name is on that house too. Try me." Then, "Vanessa says you're acting pathetic." Emily stared at that last one. "Don't answer," I said. "I know. But knowing something and feeling it are not the same." That afternoon I called 3 places: my insurance agent, the county recorder's office, then the Ohio BMV title office. I did not ask for favors, muddy, clean water. I asked for copies, confirmations, dates, and records. Every answer came back exactly where Margaret and I had left it years before. The trust lien was recorded. The occupancy clause was attached. The Tahoe title belonged to Orchard Creek Properties. Ryan was an authorized driver, not the owner. Facts do not raise their voices. They don't need to. Around dinner, Emily found the photos. Ryan stood in the driveway of the house, one arm around Vanessa, the black Tahoe behind them, porch lights glowing like a magazine ad. Vanessa wore a red coat and Emily's sunglasses. Ryan's caption said, "New chapter, new queen, same empire." I stared at the word empire until it nearly made me laugh. There were comments from men he knew in construction, fire emojis, congratulations. One woman asked, "Is that the house you built?" Ryan replied. Every brick, every mile, mine. Emily pushed away from the table and walked to the sink. He's making me look like I left. No, I said. He's making himself comfortable. How does that help? Comfort makes careless men talk. My phone rang then. Ryan. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, the recording arrived. Jack, you need to understand something. Emily is emotional. She always has been. You keep feeding this drama, and I'll make sure she walks away with nothing. The Tahoe is mine. The house is mine. And if you keep poking around, I'll tell everyone how your daughter ran home to Daddy because she couldn't keep her husband happy. Emily closed her eyes. I saved the voicemail. Years ago, Ryan had stood in my den with a pen in his hand, joking that contracts were just paperwork people pretend to understand. He had signed each page without reading. He had smiled, taken the keys to a vehicle he could never afford, and thanked me like a man receiving a gift. But it had never been a gift. It was help with guardrails. And now Ryan was driving straight toward them. That night, after Emily and Noah went upstairs, I opened my laptop and watched the gas station security video the cashier had sent through a link. There was Ryan's truck. There was Vanessa's silhouette in the passenger seat. There was my daughter standing in the rain while Noah's little backpack landed at her feet. I watched it once, only once. Then I forwarded it to Martin Keller. His reply came 7 minutes later. That will do. I looked out at the wet driveway and felt the old anger rise again, but this time I did not push it away. I gave it a job. Protect them, nothing more, nothing less. Martin Keller's first letter went out the next morning, not by email. Martin did not trust email when a man like Ryan was already twisting words into weapons. The notice went by certified mail and private process server because, as Martin put it, some men only respect paper when it arrives with a witness. By noon, Ryan had been informed that Emily and Noah had protected occupancy rights in the marital home and that Orchard Creek Properties had begun review of his vehicle use agreement. By 12:23, my phone rang. I let it ring. By 12:25, Emily's phone lit up. She looked at me across the kitchen table. Noah was in the living room building a crooked tower with wooden blocks, humming like the world had not cracked open 2 nights before. Don't answer, I said. I wasn't going to. Still, her hand hovered near the phone. A marriage does not stop pulling at you just because a man betrays it. The voicemail came through a minute later. Emily played it on speaker. You think this scares me? Ryan said. His voice had that sharp edge men use when they're trying to sound calm for someone nearby. That old man is playing lawyer with paperwork he doesn't understand. Vanessa and I are meeting clients tonight, and when they see the house, the Tahoe, the whole life I built, nobody is going to care what you claim. You walked away, Emily. Remember that. Noah's block tower fell in the other room. Emily flinched. I stopped the recording before it could repeat. He's not talking to you. She frowned. He's talking to himself. That evening, Martin called. Ryan received the notice. I figured. He also called my office and used several words that probably disappointed his mother, assuming she is capable of that. I almost smiled. What now? Now we do what the agreement says. Orchard Creek can revoke vehicle use after written notice if the vehicle was used in connection with abandonment or intimidation. You have the gas station video, his texts, and his voicemail. I am sending the revocation tonight, and if he refuses, then the recovery company retrieves company property, peacefully, legally, preferably while he is too proud to see it coming. I was quiet. Martin knew me too well. Jack, you will not go over there. No, you will not speak first. No. You may observe from a reasonable distance if the recovery company permits it. I looked toward Margaret's picture on the mantel. You really were her favorite bulldog. She had excellent judgment. Ryan and Vanessa's client dinner was at the Briarwood Club, a private place outside town where men wore watches large enough to announce their insecurities. I knew the parking lot because I had repaired rooftop heating units there for 20 years. Men like Ryan walked through the front doors now. Men like me came through the service entrance back then. At 7:40, I parked across the street in the hardware store lot. The black Tahoe sat near the entrance, under soft yellow lights, freshly washed windows dark. Ryan had parked it crooked across 2 spaces, as if even pavement lines were beneath him. A white recovery truck idled near the curb. The driver was a thick-shouldered woman named Denise, who wore a knit hat and moved like she had heard every excuse on earth. "You, Jack?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am. I got the title copy revocation notice, insurance letter, and authorization from Orchard Creek. We're good. I don't want trouble." Nobody ever does, until trouble walks out wearing cologne. She backed toward the Tahoe with quiet precision. Through the club's tall windows I could see Ryan inside near the bar. Vanessa stood beside him in a cream-colored coat. Ryan's hand rested on her back. He looked relaxed, proud, like a man showing people property he had mistaken for character. The toe straps were nearly set when the front door opened. Ryan stepped out first, smiling at something someone behind him had said. Then he saw the truck. His face emptied. "Hey!" he shouted. "What the hell are you doing?" Denise did not look impressed. "Recovering company property. That is my vehicle." "No, sir." Vanessa came out behind him. So did several people from inside, drawn by the smell of humiliation, the way people pretend not to enjoy. Ryan spotted me across the lot. His eyes narrowed. "You." I walked over slowly, not because I wanted drama, because men like Ryan mistake distance for fear. "You did this?" he asked. "I signed the authorization. You can't tow my Tahoe." Denise handed him a copy of the title record. "Not yours." Ryan slapped the paper away. It floated onto the wet pavement. Vanessa picked it up. "What does she mean, not yours?" she asked. Ryan turned red. "It's complicated." "No," I said. "It's actually very simple." He stepped toward me. "You vindictive old—" "Careful," I said. Something in my voice stopped him. Good. I wanted him to hear me. "You kept calling it your car," I said. "Funny thing about titles. They don't care what a liar calls them." Nobody spoke. The recovery truck lifted the Tahoe's front wheels with a hydraulic groan. Vanessa stared at the paper in her hand, then at Ryan. "You told me you bought this." Ryan lowered his voice. "Not here." But it was already here. That was the thing about public lies. Eventually, they demand public correction. One of the older men near the club doors said, "Ryan, is this going to affect the Miller project?" Ryan looked back at him, panic flashing across his face. "No, absolutely not." My phone buzzed. Martin. "Jack, he said the county recorder confirmed something else. Ryan tried to submit a home equity application last week using the house as free and clear collateral." I looked at Ryan while his borrowed empire rolled slowly toward the street. "Did it go through?" I asked. "No, but the bank's legal department is now asking why he represented the property that way." Vanessa folded the title paper and put it in her purse. I watched the first real crack appear in Ryan Miller's life. It did not sound like shouting. It sounded like a woman asking quietly, "What else did you lie about?" By morning, the video from the Briarwood Club had traveled farther than any of us wanted. Not the whole thing, just 10 shaky seconds. Someone filmed through the glass doors, the black Tahoe lifting off the pavement, Ryan shouting, "Vanessa," holding the title paper, and me saying one sentence people enjoyed more than it deserved. Funny thing about titles, they don't care what a liar calls them. Emily found it first. She stood in the kitchen with her phone in one hand and Noah's cereal bowl in the other. "Dad," she said, "people are sharing it." I took the bowl before milk spilled over the counter. "Then don't read the comments." I already did. Of course she had. Wounded people look at wounds even when they know better. Noah sat at the table, pushing marshmallows around with his spoon. "Is Daddy in trouble?" Emily froze. I sat beside him. "Your dad made some grown-up mistakes, like bad words. Worse than bad words." He considered that with the solemn judgment of a 4-year-old. "Did he say sorry?" "Not yet," I said. At 9:12, Martin Keller called and told us to come to his office. The old bank building smelled like floor polish and wet coats. Martin's secretary gave Emily tea without asking. Maybe she had seen enough family disasters to know when coffee would only sharpen a person's nerves. Martin waited in the conference room with 3 stacks of paper. 1 stack was ours. 1 was Ryan's. The 3rd was trouble. "I received a letter from Ryan's attorney," Martin said. "He claims the vehicle recovery was harassment and that the house belongs to him as the primary financial contributor." Emily whispered, "Primary financial contributor?" Martin slid a document toward her. "That is what he told the bank on his home equity application." I looked at the signature page. Ryan had claimed control of the property, understated Emily's interest, and omitted the Morgan family trust lien entirely. "There it is," Martin said. Emily frowned. "There what is?" The door closing. He opened the oldest folder, the one Margaret and I had signed 7 years earlier when Emily was pregnant and Ryan's ambition had still looked like energy instead of appetite. Jack Martin said, "You remember why Margaret insisted on Section 12? I did. I remembered her sitting beside me at this very table, wearing her blue winter coat because the office heat was broken. She had tapped the draft with one finger and said, 'If a man accepts help from us, he does not get to use that help as a weapon against our daughter.'" Martin turned the paper so Emily could read. Section 12 was dry, legal language, nothing dramatic, just words arranged carefully enough to outlive arrogance. If Ryan attempted to transfer, pledge, encumber, conceal, or materially misrepresent the house vehicle or trust-backed assets in a manner harmful to Emily or any minor child of the marriage, the trust could demand immediate repayment, enforce its lien, revoke related asset use, and petition for emergency occupancy protection. Emily read it twice. "He signed this, initialed every page," Martin said, "but he always said you gave us the money." "I gave you protection," I said. The money was just the part he noticed. Martin opened Ryan's stack. He also signed a personal acknowledgement. He read aloud, "I, Ryan Patrick Miller, understand that assistance provided by the Morgan Family Trust does not constitute an unconditional gift to me individually, and that any misuse, concealment, or misrepresentation may result in enforcement of all secured rights." Emily covered her mouth. "He didn't lose everything because I took it," I said softly. "He lost it because years ago he signed a paper he was too arrogant to read." Martin nodded. "And yesterday he gave us evidence that he violated it." Emily did not look relieved. She looked sad. A betrayed wife can want safety and still grieve the man she thought existed. Justice does not erase love overnight. It only turns the lights on. "What happens now?" she asked. "We seek emergency possession for you and Noah while divorce proceedings begin," Martin said. "The trust lien prevents him from using the house as his personal wallet. Ryan cannot lock you out, sell it, refinance it, or pretend it is his alone. And the Tahoe? Already secured." Emily looked down. "He told everyone he built our life." Martin's expression softened. "People who build lives do not abandon children at gas stations." That afternoon, Ryan came to my house, not up the driveway, just to the curb. He sat in a borrowed silver sedan with the engine running. I stepped onto the porch before Emily could see. Ryan lowered his window. "You happy?" "No, you embarrassed me in front of clients." "You did that before I arrived." His face twisted. "You think paperwork makes you a man?" "No," I said. "Keeping my grandson out of a gas station at midnight does." He looked past me toward the house. "Tell Emily this isn't over." "She knows."
"I'll fight it."
"You should. Then every document becomes public." That stopped him. For 1 second I saw the calculation behind his eyes. The house, the Tahoe, the bank application, the video, Vanessa, the lies, all of it lining up in a row he could no longer step around. Then the rear passenger door opened. Vanessa got out. Ryan snapped, "Get back in the car." She ignored him and walked toward the porch holding a manila envelope. "I need to give this to Emily," she said. Ryan stepped out. "Vanessa." She turned on him. "You told me you were divorced. You told me the house was yours. You told me your son was with his grandmother because Emily was unstable." Emily appeared behind me then. Vanessa's voice broke. I believed him. Ryan looked from one woman to the other, and I watched his kingdom shrink to the size of a driveway. Vanessa handed me the envelope. "Texts," she said. "Bank screenshots, messages where he asked me to say I'd been living there for months. He said it would help prove Emily abandoned the home." Emily went pale. Ryan whispered, "You don't know what you're doing." Vanessa looked at him with no anger left. "Yes, I do. I'm getting out before your lies start using my name too." She took a suitcase from the trunk and walked down the sidewalk in the rain. Ryan stood there alone. For the first time since I had known him, he had no audience, no vehicle, no story ready. Just his own signature catching up with him. The envelope Vanessa handed over changed the rhythm of everything. Until then, Ryan had been fighting like a man trying to hold a door shut with his shoulder. After Vanessa's messages, the hinges came loose. Martin filed for emergency relief the next morning. By Friday, we were inside a county courtroom that smelled of old paper floor wax and nervous coffee. Emily wore the navy dress Margaret had bought her years earlier. She said it made her feel like her mother was standing beside her. Noah stayed with Mrs. Alvarez next door. Before we left, he looked at Emily and asked, "Are you coming back?" Emily knelt in front of him. "Always." The hearing was not dramatic the way people imagine. No one slammed a fist on a table. Nobody confessed under a spotlight. Real truth usually arrives in binders. Martin presented the trust documents, vehicle agreement, gas station video, Ryan's voicemails, home equity application, and Vanessa's messages. Ryan's attorney objected where he could, but objections are not magic. They cannot make signatures disappear. Ryan sat across the room in a gray suit that no longer fit his life. He avoided looking at Emily until Martin played the gas station video. There she was on the screen, standing under those hard white lights, rain shining on her hair, Noah's shark backpack at her feet. The judge watched in silence. Then she asked one question. "Mr. Miller, did you leave your wife and minor child at that station without transportation?" Ryan's attorney leaned toward him, whispering fast. Ryan swallowed. "It was a misunderstanding." The judge removed her glasses. "That was not my question." For the first time since this began, Ryan had no clever sentence ready. "Yes," he said. Emily closed her eyes. That one word did not fix anything, but it placed reality on the record. By the end of the hearing, Emily received temporary exclusive occupancy of the house. Ryan was ordered to vacate, return personal property, and stay away except through scheduled legal arrangements. The trust lien remained enforceable. The bank froze his application and opened its own review. The judge also ordered temporary support and strict parenting conditions. Outside the courthouse, Emily stood on the steps and breathed like she had been underwater for weeks.
"I thought I'd feel happy," she said.
You feel tired, I told her. That's what happens when your body finally believes it survived. Ryan walked past us with his attorney. He stopped for half a second as if he might say something. Then he saw me, saw Emily, saw the courthouse doors behind us, and kept walking. No audience, no empire, no borrowed Tahoe shining in the lot. Just a man learning that paper could be louder than pride. The next few months were not easy. Stories like this never end the day the judge signs an order. Emily returned to the house with a locksmith, a deputy, and me. The place smelled like Ryan's cologne and stale takeout. Noah's toys had been shoved into a plastic bin in the garage. Emily stood in the living room and shook. "Do you want to leave?" I asked. She wiped her eyes. "No, I want to clean." So we cleaned. We opened windows. We washed blankets. We took down the cheap framed quote Ryan had hung above the fireplace that said, "Winners build their own rules." Emily carried it outside herself and dropped it in the trash. Then she rehung the picture of Noah at the pumpkin patch. That felt better than revenge. Ryan fought the divorce, then stopped once the bank's review turned uglier. There were depositions, letters, meetings, and bills that made my stomach hurt. Martin kept saying the same thing, one clean fact at a time. Eventually, Ryan agreed to a settlement. The house was sold under court supervision. Emily received what she was owed. The trust was repaid. Ryan kept his debts and his excuses. Vanessa left town, and from what I heard, she sent one final statement to the bank before she went. I never celebrated his collapse. Some people expect me to say I enjoyed watching him lose the vehicle, the house, the reputation he had polished like chrome. But hatred is expensive. It charges interest long after the other person leaves the room. I had a daughter to help rebuild, and a grandson to teach that midnight does not always mean danger. By spring, Emily rented a small house 12 minutes from mine. She said she wanted something that belonged to her name, her paycheck, her decisions. The first night there, Noah picked the smallest bedroom because it had a window facing a maple tree. "Grandpa," he said, "this house doesn't have a gas station, right?" I sat on the floor beside his little bed. "No, buddy, and Mommy won't get left." "No." He hugged the stuffed bear from that night at the Shell station. "Good," he whispered. That summer we drove past the same station on our way to a Little League game. I felt Emily stiffen beside me. Noah looked out the window. "Can we stop for chocolate milk?" Emily and I glanced at each other. Then she smiled. "Sure." We went inside. Same bell over the door, same burnt coffee smell, same cracked tile near the register. But this time, Noah chose chocolate milk, paid with $2 I gave him, and walked out laughing because the cashier called him Sir. Emily stood beside the truck, sunlight on her face, no longer looking like a woman waiting to be abandoned. That was when I understood what winning really was. It was not Ryan's empty driveway. It was not the Tahoe being towed, or a judge reading orders from the bench. It was my daughter holding her keys without shaking. It was my grandson walking into a gas station without fear. It was knowing that the things Margaret and I built had done what they were meant to do, protect the people we loved when they needed a way home. Real revenge is not destroying someone. It is refusing to let their cruelty become the place your family has to live. If this story reminded you of someone you love, or a moment when you had to stand between your family and someone who crossed the line, I hope you'll share it in the comments. And if you believe quiet strength, truth, and family still matter, I'd be honored to have you stay with us for the next story.